Well, this leads our bulletin this hour. AmaZulu traditional Prime Minister Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi has been removed from his position as announced by King Misizulu kaZwelithini yesterday, although no reasons were given. Buthelezi took on this role earlier this year following the passing of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who held it for over 60 years. He currently serves as the MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal. To discuss this further, we're now joined by historian Professor Pitika Ntuli. Prof, a very good morning to you and thank you so much for your time. Perhaps there's no better way to start, but were you shocked by the removal of Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi as AmaZulu traditional Prime Minister a mere 11 months into his role?
I wasn't shocked, and I'm glad you raised that question. I just recently listened to Professor Mangosuthu outlining the role that the Prime Minister of the Zulus do in the protection of custom and as a repository of our culture. Now, for over 60 years or 80 years, this position has been it's a unifying one. But remember that when he was being brought, appointed, there was controversy. The people who were opposed, to it. Looking around what they presume is his lifestyle and what exactly he does. People felt that that wasn't actually the case. But the fact that it's going to happen during this period in the Zulu history, and even on a Christmas day, clearly indicates the seriousness of the decision itself.
Just looking at the letter by the Zulu King Misizulu kaZwelithini to Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi, understanding, of course, the King expressing his disappointment that over the past 11 months, it had come to his attention that Buthelezi's actions as traditional Prime Minister has strayed from the expectation of the monarch. As we continue to get your reaction, Pez, help us place where things went wrong here and what the implications then of this dismissal and subsequent vacancy now pose for the Zulu nation, particularly, Prof, as you're saying, that this is a position that, amongst many, is meant to unify the Zulu nation.
Yes, I think it's very, very, very important that this thing has got to be, in a sense, thought through, very thoroughly. But also remember that in social media, there are also implications of the pending cases on very serious issues that seem to link Thulasizwe Buthelezi with some wrongdoing, which cannot actually be a role that can actually fit a nation such as the Zulu and the position in which he holds and which was held so eloquently and so clearly well by his predecessor.
And that is it, continue, Prof.
Yeah, so what's going to happen now, the King in Council has got to go back to scratch to look at, the successor, to it. And it can be a very long, kind of drawn out, thing, because that has got nothing to do with government. This is the Zulu nation as a nation addressing the issue. So the King in Council, even as we speak right now, I'm dead sure that the Buthelezi clan must also be meeting, thinking the way forward.
As the King himself admits, and just to your point about this position and what it means, the King saying that the position of Prime Minister to the Zulu monarch carries a profound legacy of unparalleled significance. And you've just touched on it now, we know, and we've seen with the former Prime Minister, the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, 60 years in that, or more than 60 years, in fact, in that position. Given this and the fact that it is a role that is deeply rooted in tradition and needs someone wise enough to command respect in order to build the unity needed in the nation, do you then perhaps think that because of the change of guard that the king himself, uMisizulu kaZwelithini, brought to the throne, he may have to find someone that is symbolic of that change, but also embodying the characteristics that we've just been describing?
I mean, definitely, because it's a decision that cannot be taken by one person. It's a decision that is going to be taken by the king in council, right? And if at all it is going to come out of the Buthelezi family, they too would have to be involved at some stage, traditionally. So that this time, now that this has actually happened, therefore means to say that more thought has got to be brought, onto it, and this role, to be clearly, defined, because under Mangosuthu, he dealt with religion. He dealt with he was IFP, but he also dealt with the ANC without much trouble to straddle this. So it needs somebody that is very well balanced. In fact, somebody who would have been prepared actually for this role, as Mangosuthu Buthelezi himself was prepared for this from this role, from his father and grandfather, who had also occupied this position in their lifetimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how this question is going to sound, but just to your point about who is really needed to assume this position, and just looking at the politics side of things, to what extent has the politicization of a traditional prime minister's role been a factor in carrying out one's duties optimally, while also being seeped in tradition? I mean, would someone apolitical perhaps be better suited? It's not lost on me, of course, that the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi himself, with his 6-decade reign as traditional prime minister, had significant political lineage as the founder emeritus of the IFP. And I mean, of course, also what we know about the Reverend is that he is also in government and also in politics.
Yeah, but then what happens, therefore, is that I'm glad that you are bringing up the issue of politics. In social media, there have been a lot of letters written by ANC members complaining about the prime minister. But to what extent should people do? But this is a purely Zulu matter. The prime minister is not even paid by government. It's paid, by the Zulu nation itself. So we have to distinguish these things, between. Already people are saying they think that the king is more IFP than anything. I mean, that does not even catch in any eyes. If the IFP is an organization that has been created in order to safeguard the customs and the culture of the Zulu people, therefore the king has got to be in it. Which does not necessarily mean to say, yeah, you could do that to the exclusion of everything else. So right now, you are right when you're saying that somebody that has been time tested, they'll have to go back again if they want somebody from the Buthelezi people, look for someone who had been brought up in a manner that clearly understand this, or was he brought in there because he was already an MVC? All of those things would need to be therefore being factored, so that pure traditional Zulu culture has got to be followed in order to replace, the person that has been dismissed.
And when we look at the king's reign itself, it has been marred with controversy. I mean, from his lineage being questioned, before he assumed the throne, to a number of court cases still hanging over his head. I mean, this is probably a pivotal moment for him, given the fact that we've also seen reports that his authority is being undermined, and not just within the kingdom itself. Perhaps talk to us about this moment for the king and what his next steps really should be here.
Yeah, because I mean, right now we are also talking about this thing when the Zulu nation itself is not firmly on the ground with all the court cases, with all the disputes that are happening. Therefore the king has got to act in a manner in which he has got to put up his own authority to show that the people his people have elected him to lead them, they've done a very right decision. So he has got to make unpopular decisions. And that's why I think he had to do it even on Christmas, so that he should not wait even for Boxing Day to take the decision that he has taken, because there must be a lot of pressures that have been applied on him behind the scenes.
I mean, one of his other pressures, of course, is just him calling for the dismissal of the Ingonyama Trust board, the investigation into just some of, what is happening within the board itself for many years, particularly speaking about how there is no accountability in the Ingonyama Trust. There is a lot of mounting pressure for him as well.
Oh, yes. I mean, the Ingonyama Trust, I think the Zulu nation need to go back, reimagine what it was created to take out the politics that is out of it for the benefit of the people for which it was created. So then all the people who are actually taking sides, people take sides, of course, from what they are going to benefit out of it, and therefore continue to muddy the waters. But the Ingonyama Trust is very central to the Zulu nation, and how it is actually handled is going to decide the trajectory of how this nation is going to move forward for the benefit of its people.
And Prof, as we wrap up our conversation, I've also been looking at a number of reports and comments on social media, as you rightfully put it. There is a lot of fascination around the Zulu nation, and a lot of South Africans obviously wanting to understand and be deeply entrenched in not only the heritage, but the culture. Speak to us about, just the significance of the Zulu nation to the psyche of South Africa, to the psyche of Africans in this country.
In the year 1879, in the Anglo-Zulu War, the Zulu nation, led by King Misizulu, in the battlefield with Ingonyama Kamahole as a chest of the army, with Ntuli and Kodite on their left, defeated the Brits. That made the British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli to say, these Zulus are a remarkable people. They convert our bishop, they defeat our generals, they settle a dynastic line of the European nation. Now, when you say that even centuries ago, this is what has been said about this nation and how it has, for us to decline to a position in which we are, right now, Reverend realizes that all thinking people, Zulu thinking people, need to pull their socks around in order to save this nation and set an example for the rest of what is happening around the world.
Prof, that's where we have to leave it for now. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show and, of course, unpacking the significance of this development story. Of course, that is historian Professor Pitika Ntuli there for us, speaking on this very important story that continues to top our bulletins. That is, of course, the AmaZulu traditional Prime Minister, Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi, has been removed from his position as a traditional Prime Minister. We'll continue then to get analysis on this particular story.